bit dark. It's quite dark. Maybe it is though. Oh, see what you think there. Hello all. Just readjusting our lights a bit. I do need to replace that bulb over there. G'day, another Wednesday.
Still very dark.
Yeah. Not sure how to rectify that right now. Another Wednesday. We're still quite wet here. The forecast is for less rain in the next few days. Refresh that. So a few showers tomorrow, and then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday should be fine, which is what we're really looking forward to. It is maybe a little bit on Saturday. No, a very light chance on Saturday. It only takes a couple of mil and we're saturating, and the soil is really saturated. It's the wettest I've seen it here. If you have to walk in a direction more than 5 times, it just turns to slush. So everything's, all that topsoil structure is just disintegrating. So it's really quite interesting. So yeah, we have to find things that we can do that don't cause too much mess. Some things we still have to do regardless. So yeah, it's a fair bit of I was commenting last week, it's a fair bit of contemplation about what changes we might need to do. Yes, I would be wetter here because I've got the swales in. So the swales, there's water sitting in the swales. I think the big swales still, I think it quite might have stopped today, or we had a bit of rain last night. So possibly today it stopped overflowing the big swales in the spillways. But the swales are still full of water. There's several hundred mil of water sitting there. Chat disconnected, Zara. So not sure what's going on there. So it's as long as I'm still but I've got no chat. Am I still active? Yeah. Okay. I was just working on a swale just out from the house here, doing a chop and drop. Yes, I'm very late on the chop and drop, but it needed to be done. And as I walked up the paddock towards it, you could just see moisture coming out of the soil. So that's 7 or 8 meters away from the base of the swale. So that the moisture in the swale is oozing through and coming through. So everything's very, very wet. We will be hydrating everything really, really well, which is great. It's fantastic. It will be interesting to see. How I was just looking at a long range forecast, and they're saying that we're going to get a lot more rain in our winter, where we're supposed to be having little rain or dry spring. We usually get a bit of rain up until about July, but they're saying we're going to get a lot of that. I didn't have a chance to fully read that. So that's going to be very interesting. Something I really need to do is around the main house. This one's okay. I had a tour come through on the weekend, and about 15 people walked to this house here. So that just turned our pathway to mush, having those extra feet tromping through. But the other house between it and the feed shed, which is a big, busy access, we've got to do that every day, several times a day. Which is the chooks and the cows and everything, that's just really turned to mush and very slippery. It's actually dangerous slippery. So we do need to, I think we need to, the intention is to concrete that. And some people might say, well, that's a bit over the top. Gravel paths underneath the gravel. So there's a gravel section around a couple of gravel little sections around the place, and it's just turning to mush underneath the gravel. So you'd have to have a very lot of gravel to stabilise it, and also that path going to the chook pen, there's water, overflow water accumulates and runs down there, so it'll wash the gravel away pretty quick. So I'm going to go to concrete on that. So this season, as soon as I get a chance, can't do it at the moment, I'll be putting in some concrete paths just to alleviate the mess that's occurring. So that's the question: is it acceptable behaviour to use concrete? You need to make the assessment on the embodied energy over a long period of time, not short period of time. So so a good concrete path, 50 years expectation on that and more. Then if it's done well and done correctly, that's what my objective is, to achieve that. And so there's been a lot of thought into the design, and that's the direction we're going to go with that, just to make it a bit safer and a bit more comfortable. I've got one section up the back, different story up the back there, that I have to walk through with the cows. Somehow or other, I need to rectify that, because I can't walk through with gumboots because the water's deeper than my gumboots. So that needs to change if we're going to continue having a lot of water and the dam full of water. This is the most the dam's ever been full of water for a long period of time, and it's inconvenient to take the gumboots off every time we want to go through there. So I have to look at that. I have to think about that. Yes, I still need to do those other repairs, but I just can't get up there at this stage. It's just way too wet to manoeuvre. We're actually having trouble putting our cars away at the moment. It's getting so boggy and slippery. What's happened is, everything that we do, we keep building soil and accumulating organic matter, and then of course when it gets to so wet like this, it just turns to mush. I would say there'd be places on the planet that are wet like this all the time, or most of the time. The ecology must be very interesting to be able to manage that, to survive through that, because our ecology here is struggling because the structure is breaking down. It's fracturing and breaking down. So it's quite interesting to think about that. Majority of the time here we're quite dry, and so how does the ecology function in both those scenarios is quite interesting. Because it's a problem. Okay, at the moment we have a problem. So what is the solution? That is basically what we're thinking about regularly, is what is the solution. Thankfully, this house is coping fine. I've got drainage around the back and overflow drainage and in the ground drainage, not quite adequate, but we are not having any issues at this point. And the other house is fine. It's just between the houses is a bit messy. So we're living in gumboots. So I did have my boots on for a period of time, my work boots on, because I was on the chainsaw a couple of days ago, and I really get annoyed with sawdust going in the gumboots. So where I was doing it, it wasn't so wet, but as soon as I finished doing that, back on with the gumboots. Otherwise, you wear your work boots out too quick because they just disintegrate with so much moisture. So I guess the topic today is about the problem is the solution on. So we're thinking, what is the problem? Is it a serious problem? See, normally when we have the wet situation, it's only for a short period of time, but this is extended. We had a good 3 weeks of it, 4 weeks of it in late February, March, and now we're having it again. So we must be. I haven't actually looked at the. I don't have it here. It's close by the rainfall. When did this rain sort of start? Zara, can you just grab me that rainfall chart?
2.5 weeks ago.
So we're coming into 3 weeks. There, it's just on the table there. We're just coming into 3 weeks, I guess, of that. You just need to see if there's any chats going, because I've got no chat.
Yeah, our garden was weeding several.
Oh, g'day. What's that? About the 8th it started. So that's when we've had. I haven't added that totally up. Had about 400 mil in 2.5 weeks, and which is not a lot of rain, but because everything was saturated from the I haven't even had those up 2 months before, causing us a little bit of grief. 1, 2, 3 months before. Yeah, so hopefully we're going to look forward to a bit of rain. Oh, one other thing that's occurring is, because it's so wet and the structure's not ideal, the cows are making a bit of a mess where they're grazing. I gave them a bigger section today and they absolutely smashed that. I didn't think they'd mess that up. One of the rules of biodynamics is if the soil's too wet, do not cultivate. So I've got cows in very wet soil, so they're basically cultivating. What happens is it seals the soil and damages the soil, and it's not ideal. It takes a long time for that soil to repair itself. So I'm a bit concerned that next time I come around in the 60 days that the cow's going to come back to that space, will it be okay? Am I going to have very little feed in the cycle because I'm damaging the soil so much with the cow? And the paddock just out front here, it's recovering quite well. I thought it wasn't, and then I just noticed today it's recovering quite well. There's a section just up here that got a lot more impacted down than just down below a bit. So I'm going to watch that and just see. It's interesting because it's just the pattern is that each time the cows have been there, it's actually been very wet. And so we're doing, am I doing damage? Am I doing damage that's going to take a long time to repair? Because we've been getting rain, we're not getting much sunshine, so the plants aren't synthesizing properly or adequately. And also, you might notice I've got a jumper on, so it's cooled down. It's not as cold tonight. It will get cool a bit later, but several nights ago, all of a sudden, it was very cold. We had the fire going, and we were very cold. So there's been a season change. So the temperature's colder. We're getting less sunlight, and everything's very wet. So will my pastures be okay, or am I going to have an issue? So I've got to really measure and monitor. I might have to hurry up and drop off a part of my stock. Yeah.
Ernest Merrimer is saying hi, Tom. And Garden of Wheat is saying, do you think it will be your highest annual rainfall on record this year? Definitely very wet for you.
I think that's easy, yes, because we're not halfway through the year, and what did we? That was 13, but I got 1300 on the chart here. But the end of February, 1300 mil. However, the rain gauge overflowed, so we don't know exactly what that was. We're working on. I haven't added up March, but we're working on. We've had 1.5. We had 1.5 meters by then, so we're another 4. So it's really looking towards our wettest year.
Almost 1.5 times what normal annual rainfall is already after 5 months.
By the end of February, our average is meant to be 430 mil, and it was 1500 mil. So it's a lot. Yes, we've got a long part of the year to go. In all, but it's our wettest wet season that we've had in nearly 17. Well, I've been in the valley more than 17 years. So the 17 years that I've been in the valley, we had another wet time, but not like this, not extended like this. And with the forecast saying it's going to get more and more wet, then that's going to be very interesting. So I'd love to have a wetter spring, but we don't know. But hopefully I'm going to have a good submoisture. So even if the spring stops raining like it's supposed to, or not stops, but backs right off for our climate here, I'm hoping that that submoisture is going to hang around. It should hang around because we've really wetted it up. And then we will get really good extended growth. That's what I'm hoping. Get the fruit trees to crank away and the support species cranking away, which is why I'm doing the chop and drop. I'm late with chop and drop, of course, but why I'm making sure it does happen is because the main plant that's really gotten very crazy is the mugwort, and it's not allowing others. So the section we're on today, there's leucaena that only got planted. I don't think it's 12 months ago. I think it was less than 12 months ago. I think we had a wet occasion, say sort of maybe August, something like that, and they got planted, if I recall correctly. So they're getting not much light, so they're not really performing. So now we've got the full light onto them, so hopefully they get bigger. It's only leucaena, it's not a big issue. We've managed the fruit trees up on the swale mound, but these leucaenas at the base and the mugwort's hanging over them. And I've got a lot of that up the back. That's next week's project, is to get up there, and there's some timber trees in there, the silky oaks, that will be struggling because the mugwort's doing similar. So, and they'll be getting distorted. So that's next week's project, or next couple of weeks, which we can keep doing this sort of thing, because I can't do much else with this wet. It's just, as I said, need to get into fencing. I dig a hole, it's going to be full of water, and I can't compact the soil back because it's just going to be mud. So I can't get into doing fencing, putting corner posts and strainer posts with it like this. So fencing has been put on hold, buildings put on hold, concreting's put on hold, everything's put on hold because it's so wet. So just get stuck into managing the plants, which is needs to be done. You're going to grow lots of plants, they need to be managed, because we're putting in the pioneer species, they need to be managed. They are performing, they're doing what they need to do to cooperate and help the climax species grow, but they need to be managed. They're biological resource, timing and management. I wouldn't say my timing is the best, but the management. Was there any other comment I need to do on that, on those couple of questions?
Garnet winds are crazy about rainfall.
I made a bit of a comment last week about the rainfall, and someone saying this is the worst year. Okay, I will reflect on that. That there's people being totally flooded, and there's people that have put their crops in, and they've been totally flooded out again. The Lockyer Valley's had that. That's not ideal. That's a big issue, and I feel for them. But are they designing out of it? I saw a post and I commented, Desire, an organic grower, he apparently has won an award or whatever for amazing stuff that he does. And he's losing plants because they're flooded. But when you look at the photo, he's got the plants growing so it's plastic covered beds with holes punched in it, and the plants growing out of that. And then there's weed mat on the ground between the beds. So there's no natural soil occurring at all. It's a monoculture. Even though it's organic, it's monoculture. So how can that soil dry out? It's the moisture underneath the plastic is just going to be saturated. No wonder it's going to be going anaerobic, and plants are dying. You can totally understand that. It's a really poor design. We lost plants in a small planting that we did in a wood chip mulch and well mulched paths. They struggle because they were only just transplanted in, and they got very wet, and that's fair. But if they were a bit more established, I'm pretty sure they would function. And because I've got a better well-drained soil, I've got a natural soil, and also it can dry out from evaporation. It's their dry out's got to happen from drainage, total drainage, and everything's flooded. It's not going to drain it. I don't think it's a good design. We need to have good design for these situations, and that's really quite critical. And we're always going to be analysing our design to make sure that we're creating changes, putting in swales. That's my comment here. As I'm very wet, it's because I've got swales. If I hadn't have the swales, it would have drained off, overflow, and gone. Yes, we're going to get continual rain. We're having continual rain, but that will still run off. So what's happening now is I get the seepage coming through. So I've created it to be wetter, but hopefully the intention is they're going to get deeper soils and more plant and root activity. So hopefully it evolves into plants that are deeper rooted. The soil improves in its depth. And then I can handle in years to come another wet event like this, and not as prolific. It was really quite interesting. I was commenting to someone the other day on a subject similar to that. Just out the back here, there's a little cabin, and we had a guy from Switzerland staying in that cabin quite a few years ago, actually, probably 10 years or so ago. And I'd only just put the big swale up the top, and it filled up with water in that first season. And he had to put planks down to walk to the cabin because water was just oozing out there. So that's the cause and effect. We put in the swale, the water is getting into the first sort of strata of the soil and coming through and seeping out. And I thought, I've created a problem. I'm probably going to have to put in a deep drain behind, so that we call them Aggie drain behind the cabin, to drain the water away, because this is not ideal that you're going to be walking through water every wet season once the swale's full. I never got around to doing that, of course. And the next season, it was really, really wet again, and the swale filled up with water, but it didn't make it soggy in front of the cabin. So in that 12 months, already something had changed on that slope between the swale and the cabin, and the water was going deeper. So that's what we need, events like this to stimulate different plant growth, different plant behavior, and build better soils. And so then, because nature's going to say, well, this is really, really wet, we need to do something about this. And so if we're going to encourage more worms and soil ecology, it's going to drain better and be able to handle those wetter situations. And I'll wait and see. So if we in another year or two time we have another wet, or 10 years time or whatever it might be, we'll just see how it behaves out there. We keep records, so we have an idea of what sort of rainfalls we've had and when we get it. So we always check in the rain gauge and get those statistics. So then you can always come back to those statistics and see the difference. So, I won't know. Obviously, I'll have to wait to see, because the question early on, is this going to be our wettest year? Well, it's going to be wet. It's got to be our wettest wet season. It is our wettest wet season to have that extended wet. The dam being fuller more is allowing more water to be in the swales more, because the water's coming into the dam, is spilling into the swales, back flooding into the swales, and then that's causing more hydration or seepage coming through. So yes, maybe that, but we have had a lot of rain. So yeah, that's my comment on that. Okay, Desires, any more questions? Because my chat is not working.
Hang on. In my food forest, I've been planting perennial tropical flowers that birds like for the bird manure nutrients benefiting the whole of the food forest. Any good suggestions for flowers birds love in the tropics?
I was going to ask you the same question. It's not something I've done a lot of, is bringing in different flowers. I've focused a lot on legumes. Okay, they have flowers, because I'm really seriously into soil building, because this was quite a damaged soil here. But yes, I would like to bring in more diversity in that respect. And I was going to ask a similar question. And the tropics, see, I'm subtropic, and so I'm not really up to speed on that. So I can't really help you with that.
But what we've noticed here is that with the diversity that we've brought in, we've actually started seeing different animal species, including different bird species.
We have, yeah.
So the more diversity you have with whatever plants you can get, it will give you more diverse animal systems automatically.
I'd probably like to focus a bit more, and Zaya's mentioned this and has a big intent with this, is to bring in more natives, bush tucker type, of course, because we're always going to be trying to chase some food one, but bring in more natives to encourage the native species to have a space to be in habitat. So I'd probably focus on that, and we will be focusing on that. There's a section out here. I've got 2 gum trees that are too close to the house here. So the intention is to drop them, which is great. That's good firewood for us. They're not very good structural timber shape, because they haven't grown properly for that. So they'll be mostly firewood. I might be able to get a few bits and pieces for some simple timber. And then once they've gone, then we're going to, that section there, we're going to get busy with bush tucker. And so that should encourage some of the native birds to come in, and of course all the other species that come with them. But I don't have I don't have much knowledge on that. It's not an area of my expertise. I wish that at the early days here, I never had someone come through I remember Jeff Lawton saying that when he first started on his property, he had someone do a survey for the bird species, and they had, I can't remember how many species they were, and then someone came through 10 years or so later, and it had doubled or something incredible like that, the bird species, because of what he'd done, and I'm sure it's even more now. And as I said, we do hear unusual birds occasionally or more regularly, um, and that's because we've created a better habitat for them. We used to have a lot of redback. Was it redback fairy? What do you call them?
Yeah, redback fairy wren.
What's it called? Redback fairy wren. Yeah, we still have a few of them around, but they actually really like to be in the lantana and jungle that we had. So I haven't recreated that habitat. They're still here, but not as prolific as they were. And remember those little red finches that used to come through every year? I haven't seen them for a long time. So maybe that's because we've got a cat.
Yeah.
Maybe that's moved them out a bit. But yeah, it's always fun to have and interesting to have the birds come in, and providing it's not the king parrots eating my bananas or something like that, but having those species come in and interacting in your space. Once we put the water pond in at the front of the farmhouse, the main house there, yeah, we have birds coming in and having a little bath. They fly in, splash, and have a bath. I saw someone do it today, and so that wasn't an option for them before. So that's created a water space, and we could do more of that, and which is great to bring those species in. So it's not just the plants; it's also water, and there'll be a lot happening that we don't even really see. Instead of having a pasture, I've got a pasture with some of it's only new, with the mugwort and the lucina, and then there's vetiver grass. I have seen the redback fairy wrens have nests in the vetiver grass at times. We supposed to trim that vetiver grass regularly, otherwise it'll die off, which I haven't done so well lately. So how come I've seen one or two nests? But that's another space that they can be in. So we've created this diverse space in the middle of a pasture that gives them a chance. That's what the old hedgerow ecology used to be in Great Britain, and all the species, your edge species, were in the hedgerows. What a great habitat for them to be in, and that's just helping the ecology and the stability. And sadly, that a lot of them being ripped out, and that culture of doing hedges. The hedgerow maintenance isn't happening anymore, or happening a lot less. I see that I have seen some still doing it, but it's an old culture that's leaving, and I'd really like to bring that in again. I don't know what species we would use here to do that, because you've got to have specific species to cut and bend over to do the hedgerow. So I remember reading about it quite many years ago, and I always thought, well, how can I do that? You need to have specific species because what you do is you cut halfway through the trunk and then you bend it over, and the bit that it doesn't snap, it bends, and then that still has the nutrient flow, and then the plant on that laid down piece puts it up verticals again, and then you come and bend them over in seasons apart or several years apart or something like that, and interweave them, and then you have a living fence hedgerow. Be fun to do. It'd be really good fun to do. I will get the Gliricidia functioning, and maybe it's one that can do that. I haven't thought. I've only just, that's a thought that maybe the Gliricidia will do that. The Gliricidia is very deciduous, and it's supposed to be stick it in the ground and grow, but we're having a little bit of issue getting it to strike properly. There was a comment we're having today on another channel of how we can get Gliricidia to propagate properly. It's supposed to be very easy to propagate, but there must be a timing thing of it. And so we're doing a bit of study on the Gliricidia for that. So yeah, that's quite interesting. Oh, his eyes pointing a finger up in there.
Garden of Wind is saying definitely great thanks in regards to the flowers to birds.
Yeah. Let's get the natives happening. The bush tucker.
And he's saying, do you cut and dry fence posts from your trees? If so, what is your methods? Thanks.
So we don't off our property here because we don't have the right species. So you need a really good hardwood species, and around here, the eucalypts that are the sort of proven ones is Gympie messmate and tallowood. And I have no Gympie messmates on the property. I had one or two tallowoods. One I cut down a few years ago, and so I don't have them. So the Gympie messmate, oh sorry, I can't remember, eucalyptus something or other. I can't remember what it is. So can you just Google Gympie messmate and get the eucalyptus, whatever it is? I don't have the book here. It's a preferred one for here, and also tallowood, which I know that too. As soon as you say them, I'll know. So what you need to do is find the trees in your region that are very good timber for fence posts.
Eucalyptus
cloisania. Yeah, that's Gympie messmate. Eucalyptus cloisania, and tallowood is microcorys. I think it's microcorys, but I'm probably wrong.
And tallowood you need?
Yeah, try tallowood. So it's I've got some logs here, but the grade of those logs, they won't last in the ground long enough. So the eucalyptus resinifera is supposed to be 20 years in the ground. The neighbor, he told me that he got 40 years out of his fence posts, his wooden fence posts. So because when he bought the property, he redid all the boundary fence, and he got 40 years. And so they would have been Gympie messmate. I would be pretty certain. So that's a nice hard wood that's supposed to last that long in the ground untreated. That's what you're chasing. So you need to just do the research on the local woods that you can use for fence posts. So I've got an issue here that I've used. We were donated some posts recently, which is fantastic, but I'm actually going to buy some. And when I do buy some more, because I don't have enough, it'll be the first time I bought posts for fencing, wooden posts for fencing for the property, which is a bit interesting. But because I didn't buy good posts, I've got quite a few posts now that are no good anymore because they've rotted off. I just grabbed what was readily available easily because I didn't have the finances to buy them. So, and now I've got to replace them. The cows just broke one today. Well, it was already broken, but they really broke it. And there's two at the cow yards that the gate's not working properly because of the post broken. So I'm going to buy some more, and they are Gympie messmates. So actually, I've recently found this guy that's got them, and they are reject trees or second grade trees that were supposed to be for power poles. And so he's got a source of them. So he has access to them, and then he cuts them to the size that you need and grades them and stuff like that. So yeah. But they are said. So how do I know these Gympie messmates? They're definitely Gympie messmates because it was a plantation that was put in for power poles. There's other species. I won't try and rattle off other names, but you need something that in the book that I have, which is it's in the office, which is not right here. The Gympie messmate is supposed to be in the ground for 50 years. Well, my neighbour got 40 years. So it's going to depend on your conditions for how long they last. So yeah, it's an interesting. I was putting in steel star pickets here, or buying star pickets, and I bought the black ones because they're cheaper. That's 10 or 15 years ago. Let's say 15 years ago, I bought some, and they are rusting off now. So I got 15 years out of them. So I've changed my policy, and I use the galvanized star pickets now, and hopefully get longer out of them. And I was talking to a guy that sells fence posts, and where in the region he is, which is a bit more west of here, and he's saying that they won't use the galvanized ones because they actually they corrode, not rust, they corrode, and they don't last. So they use the black ones. So that's really interesting. But yeah, the wooden ones are great. You know, it's a renewable. It's the way we should be doing things, and so So yeah, but you need to find a species that suits your region. So you're going to have to ask some local people; they'll know of which ones are the ones to get. So old timers, whatever that type. That some properties have a lot of timber on them that you can get it off, but this property here, it's mostly rainforesty material and a handful of eucalypts, and they're not the ideal eucalypt. There might be one, but it's probably not worth getting excited about because I'm not going to get much out of it. There's a one just out here. I think it was a tallow wood, and it got hit by lightning, so I will use that soon. I'm going to cut it down. No more questions there, Si?
Garden Weeding is saying great, thanks, and interesting on the Galv pickets.
Yeah, I was surprised with that, and actually, the same guy, he's got a property of his own, and he put in concrete posts because he had a floodway, and he thought, okay, well, I'll go concrete posts because they're rated and recommended to use, get a use out of them, and they snapped in the flood that we had recently. So he was very surprised that happened. He was like extremely surprised. So I'm not sure what his solution is going to be, but he was, they snapped. It was just that they didn't handle the situation at all. Even the big corner posts, and they were all concrete ones that he put in that section because it flooded. And so he wanted to have something that was a bit more secure, and they snapped off. So would it be better if they pushed over rather than snapping off, because they can't reuse them? And if it was a post that snapped off, well, then you could use it for firewood. Well, he can't even use it for firewood. So now he's got this lump of concrete that he's got to use. He doesn't know where he's going to use it. It's a bit of a waste. So yeah. And it's good that you're asking the questions on that, because that's what we need to do. You just don't presume that everything is going to be fine. You need to do research and ask the right people, ask several people. If you don't ask questions, you don't get answers. And so that's great that you're doing that. Okay, that was a nice little chat. Not that I could see much chat happening on the side because my chat decided to shut down. But luckily, his eyes there as a backup. And I might wrap it up. Am I allowed to wrap it up, Si?
You're allowed.
Okay, right. Thanks, people. Thanks for listening and the questions. And tell your friends that we're doing this, and see if we can get a few more people involved and get on some good subjects. Okay, cheers. You take care, and we'll talk soon.